Attention, fundamentally, has three dimensions. The first is it has a direction. Wouter talked about that earlier. It's kind of like a flashlight. It points to different things at different times. The second is it has a duration. It spends different amount of times on things. So you might switch it quickly. It might linger longer on things at other times. Third, it has a depth or an intensity, the strength of concentration, the strength of focus. When we think about managing attention, particularly in a workplace, we need to be thinking about all three of these thoughts on that. The first I call pre-commitment. How many of you make really good choices when you go to a supermarket really, really hungry? In psychology, we talk about the difference between hot decision-making and cold decision-making. When you're in a hot state is when you're facing temptation in the face. Cold state is when you're not. So given the choice, when it comes to busyness, given the choice between something easy and dull and something hard but interesting, what do you think we normally choose in that moment? We nearly always choose easy and dull, which is why we might arrive at work with good intentions, but having made the decision in advance in a cold state makes it much more likely you're going to do it in advance. So the first thing to manage when it comes to managing attention is the direction, having simple strategies that persistently point your attention back to what matters. The second one is dealing with distraction. So we know, for example, that the average office worker switches attention every 3 minutes. We also know that when you're switching backwards and forwards between email and a report or whatever, we get 40% less done. We also know when you do that, because of the task switching cost, we get much more tired. So one of the biggest, if all you ever did is switch less in a day, but did the same amount of work, you will be much less tired at the end of the day. How many of you have been in a situation where you go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting on a day? So we know, for example, that your intellectual performance drops by a measurable amount with every meeting that you go to, because there's something called the attention residue. Part of your brain is left in the previous meeting. The reason for that is the brain works on open and closed files. Now, we can help ourselves with that by a simple act of deliberately closing a file. So if all you do is at the end of the meeting spend a few moments capturing key points, but most importantly, what's the very next step for you? That acts like a full stop and allows you to be more present for the next thing. The one exception, of course, to this is if you want to be creative. So one of the things that can really help is to if you've got a task that involves complex problem solving, to actually spend a few minutes working on it, to deliberately open the file, and then leave it a few days. And what you find is when you come to it, you won't be starting at scratch.